Sound check, testing. English channel, sound check, testing.
Алло? Да, якщо значить там що, то я в принципі завтра готовий. Да. Добре, четвер зранку. Все добре, домовилися, да, передзвонить, да. Все, дякую, да, вибачте, я теж зайнятий зараз, да.
It's March the 19th. I'm Svetlana Cheperenko from Ukrinform, and we're going to be discussing today about empowering Ukraine's growth, leveraging international experience to strengthen investments absorption. Our guests today are Stefan Sikars, Senior Coordinator for Ukraine UNIDO, Ihor Burakovsky, Head of the Board of the Institute for Economic Research and Policy Consulting, Andrii Dlygach, Doctor of Economics, CEO of Advanter Group. And online with us today is Victoria Haustova, UNIDO National Expert on Industrial Development, Olga Ilyash, UNIDO Expert, and Tatiana Seleshenko, National Consultant from UNIDO. So, it's important to discuss today about the consistent, sustainable growth of Ukraine. Recovery will be just the first step. We all have to recognize that. Then we need to support all those processes in various industries.
Mr. Stefan, UNIDO conducted an industrial diagnostic research. What is the main goal and what are the key findings?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the question. Let me first very quickly say what UNIDO is. UNIDO is a UN agency for industrial development. It's a so-called specialized agency of the United Nations, and our objective is across the world to support countries to actually advance economically, and in particular in the manufacturing sector. And here in Ukraine, it's a special situation because of multiple needs for change and transformation that happened at the same time in Ukraine, and which is why we decided to become active here and to support Ukraine in its transformation of the economy towards more Western-oriented, centralized, modern, and more effective economy with the necessary framework conditions, including that it is green and compliant with the EU laws, given the fact that you want to become part of the European Union. So this is basically the framework within which UNIDO is working, and UNIDO is working a lot with enterprises on the ground, particularly SMEs, but also larger ones, but focuses on SMEs. And before one starts with work in Ukraine, of course, you need to understand what is the situation of industry. And in order to get this baseline and to see the opportunities which are there in Ukrainian industries, what are the sectors which have a particular potential, what are particular challenges that you're facing, systematic challenges, we undertook the industrial diagnostic study. I have here the executive summary. I'm saying it's an executive summary because it looks thin. The final product looks more like a telephone book and is currently being processed for printing and publishing. Also shortly, in the next month, it will be available, at least the executive summary, but I think the whole study, no, the executive summary will be available in the Ukrainian language as well. That's currently also produced and translated. So this is a framework, And just to make sure that you get actually expert input, I would like to ask my colleague Victoria to maybe give us a quick overview of the main findings of the study and some impressions on how it was conducted. Victoria, do you hear me?
Я прошу технічну команду приєднати до нас пані Вікторію.
Would kindly ask the technical team to let Victoria join our call. Victoria, hello. Yeah, good morning. Morning. So we would kindly ask you to tell us more about this study conducted by UNIDO, goals, results, and probably some recommendations that it contains for the Ukrainian authorities to ensure proper growth and development. Esteemed colleagues, good afternoon. First of all, I would like to thank for the opportunity to attend this event. The diagnostics that were conducted as part of this project dealt with a number of important moments. First of all, there was the study on the key problems and challenges that prevent Ukrainian industries from growing and developing, how those challenges slow down economic growth. We identified the main problems associated with green growth, and a separate attention has been given to the development and growth of sectors, identifying the specialization of the regions, broken down into sectors. And we conducted a number of consultations, both with the government authorities and those enterprises that represent their respective industries, trying to learn from them what problems and challenges they're facing, how they have changed their product lines and the marketplaces where they sell those products. Separately, the study contains the survey of SMEs, small and medium enterprises, businesses, learning what sort of problems they face in the time of war. And here we also identified a number of interesting and important for the proper vision of the government conclusions. For instance, we have received the following results. Less than 1/5 of the companies representing SMEs did receive support from the government using various grants and international assistance programs. And I believe it's important to let the government properly plan what steps needs to be made to support businesses and improving business climates nationwide. Talking about the industry growth. So our diagnostic study identified the key sectors and key products that are important and expedient in order to promote growth of processing industries and those industries that export their commodities. So the next results of this diagnostics study is the analysis of added value chains for the companies identified for the first stage, and as the result of consultations with the representatives of the ministries and line agencies that we conducted at a workshop conducted quite recently. And I believe these are quite concrete steps that would help to identify the points of growth, calculate which direction our processing capacity should be developed, because we learned a clear position of the government already, and there's a clear position of UNIDO and international experts who all state that deep processing industry is extremely important for Ukraine right now, which would help to create the basis for further growth. Thank you, Victoria. So, and what's good would those processes do for the future of Ukraine in terms of attracting foreign investments and thus strengthening the capacities that you just mentioned? Well, what's good for Ukraine? It's quite obvious. The growth and development of the processing industry would lay the foundation basis for economic growth and would help the government to identify the priorities of who needs to be supported. First of all, what conditions need to be created for those businesses to grow. And ultimately, this will help to attract more investments, including via private-public partnerships, PPPs, attracting private investors, etc. So those proposals to the government that we have provided them based on the results of the study would be useful and expedient both in terms of the help for the government to identify the priority industries that needs to be supported and developed, and identifying the challenges that the businesses are facing, and learning the nature and the specialization of various regions.
How UNIDO can help Ukrainian government to implement all these advices from your research?
As I mentioned before, for us, this was a baseline to establish where we are and what can be done and how we can offer support. But of course, at the same time, it informs decision makers directly, because the study goes far beyond what we as UNIDO want to do. If you recall back what Victoria just said, I mean, very broadly, you have the whole area of infrastructure at large, including investments into infrastructure. That's also, of course, a typical area of PPP. And this is something which doesn't concern, for example, our work, but for the government, this is of course relevant. Our work is that part of the economy where you have value addition through manufacturing or similar processes. That means the whole raw material discussion is also not ours. You know, the harvesting of grain, coal, iron ore, this is all, there's a lot of relevant data in there, but it's not something which has relevance for the work of UNIDO, because out of two reasons, basically. One, it's not our mandate. The second one is also in support of Ukraine, you have a delineation of different types of international organizations. And there are the banks, the development banks, which deal directly or indirectly with all types of large to medium scale investments. And then there are organizations which deal with technical cooperation at large, like UNIDO, and they are from medium or lower medium level investments downwards. They're covering that. So this is our area. Now, in that area, I mean, one of the things is, of course, we make the information available to the government. We have multiple discussions. I mean, last week, I believe we had, or up to now, in the last 4 or 5 days, we had 3 discussions alone with the Ministry of, 4, with the Ministry of Economy, and, you know, on top of that, online meetings and giving them the material and access and discussion, what can be done, what are the conclusions, like you are asking. Then, in addition, built on this research, we intend always, whatever I'm saying, if I'm not explicitly saying we do that already, then whatever we are planning is always subject to access to funding for this, right? So, but on that assumption, we are intending to support the ministry substantially more to have a better picture, better planning abilities, and better capacity to actually understand the industrial sphere, in particular medium and small enterprises across Ukraine, not only in larger cities, but medium cities and small cities. On the way here, for example, we visited in Bila Tserkva 2 industrial parks just to get a little bit more feel how medium-sized industries in state-owned parks, industrial parks, and in privately owned industrial parks are operating, what are the pluses, minuses. And we offer analytical support, data collection and information to the government to steer, or rather to facilitate the process of your economic recovery. But the bottom line of everything, and we said it in the beginning, you said it in the beginning, or maybe the starting point is if you look at the timeline of investments you want to have in 20 years, or you have a very good chance actually in 20 years to have a beautiful country with lots of economically healthy and diverse, but how do you get from here to there? And probably the first step will be generation of industries and economic growth from actors which are already in Ukraine, in particular SMEs. And then in a second stage, you have more and more investment coming in, with the international investors getting more and more confident that this is the place to go. You have certain advantages. So in order to facilitate both processes to be as quick as possible, they need to be worked on simultaneously. The international investors are cumbersome and take time to convince. So we need to start early, meaning now, and at the same time, we need to start supporting SMEs. SMEs get already some support, but if you look into a variety of data of the existing programs, and Victoria mentioned 20% of the SMEs get support, that means 80% don't, and there are a number of issues why that's not the case, why it's not reaching them, why maybe frequently they're not aware. Ukraine is a large country. So we have placed ourselves to be able to reach out across Ukraine to businesses, to help them, to support them in moving forward, while at the same time creating confidence for international investors into Ukraine, forging partnerships which can be developed into investments, getting people to know and love Ukraine in order to invest then as soon as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Stefan. Тепер цікаво почути експертну думку.
And now I would like to hear the expert opinion from inside the governments. So, Andrii and Ihor, this war goes on for 10 plus years now, and it's the heavy industries that suffered the most, because most of them were located in the east of Ukraine, and now focus has been shifted to SMEs. But what would be the ultimate role of SMEs in ensuring sustainable growth of Ukraine's economy? And what role would be played by those small local and regional businesses in this effort? Thank you. Well, I'll start by stating that today we need to clearly understand what should be the schedule of what needs to be done. On place now for Ukraine is current recovery. Not the ultimate recovery after we win this war, but the current recovery efforts. The second thing that the government should be doing is ensuring and promoting economic resilience. Resilience that could be impacted by military and other aspects. So in this sense, we need to recognize that various recommendations and proposals that are being made, they're accurate and correct, but at the same time, we need to prioritize them. What needs to be done today, tomorrow, the day after tomorrow. Another important issue that I would like to add to what we heard about this study. Ukraine is undergoing structural restructuring, industrial restructuring. We lost some industrial potential. It will take time to recover it. Some of the businesses were relocated from the areas where we have military hostilities right now. So we are forced to do this restructuring. And then the big question is whether the businesses would come back, or we will get, as a result of this war, a different economic geographical map of Ukraine. And two more bullets responding to a question. I clearly understand the mandate of UNIDO, but at some point of time, our Institute for Economic Research and Policy Consulting, we wrote some analytical paper for UNIDO, but it was way back when, in the peacetime, before the war, which means basically ages ago. But when we talk about industrial growth, there is another component that we are discussing, but which might not be still covered by certain recommendations. Namely, Ukraine needs to develop its military-industrial complex. This is a separate task and assignment which has more political rather than economic considerations. So the big question is how to balance the normal business as usual industries and military industrial complex. As to SMEs, that's the most dynamically growing business segment, economic segment in Ukraine. Such people are facing tremendous challenges right now. The problems and challenges that they were facing before, but the war intensified them. Lack of human resources, lack of access to financial resources, the issue of security and safety, especially businesses that are geographically located close to the front lines. And it's quite clear that, to a large extent, this is the challenge not only for the central government, but for local communities as well, ensuring that those businesses that were relocated will come back and thus help their communities. And the conclusion is quite straightforward. Ukraine needs to promote the development of small and medium businesses. For us, Small Business Act should be a road sign for us from the Act of EU. And those political considerations will become part and parcel of Ukraine's European integration effort. As part of the acquis communautaire that we're going to be discussing and trying to find not only domestic but external resources. And in conclusion, I would like to say that for Ukraine, attraction of resources is principally vital. In 2024, 48% of what we want to spend are foreign resources. And this asymmetrical dependence will still impact our economic policy for years to come. Mr. Andrii, the floor is yours. Following up on what Ihor stated, unfortunately, we do have financial guarantees from our international partners for the year 2024, but what about 2025? Will we, at some visible horizon, reach the self-sustainable stage? And there is no alternative other than economic growth. So we're working on the Ukrainian plan, which this week hopefully would be approved, and SME development strategy. All those efforts show that the problem is not only in lack of access to financial resources, but the capacities of the Ukrainian businesses are insufficient to attract grants and be bankable. So we're grateful to UNIDO to involve Advanter helping to conduct this study of industrial businesses all across the country and across various industries, learning the problems, challenges, and changes that occurred as the result of this large-scale aggression. So what we learned from them is that the number of companies that work with experts reduced. If pre-war, 35% of the companies, one way or another, were involved in experts, currently it's only 26%. This is a substantial reduction caused by the fact that we now receive less foreign exchange by the reduction of our export capabilities. About 40% of businesses had to discontinue their performance, but then they relaunched their businesses, which is positive. But another large road sign for Ukrainian business is this. The use of industrial capacities was 74% pre-war. Now it's only 46%. So once again, it shows why we need to identify how to jointly utilize those capacities. Let's stop complaining that there is no access to technologies and funds. No, just collect the efforts. That's why industrial parks and clusters become of paramount importance right now. Now, as to the current problems that the Ukrainian businesses are facing, what do they consider to be what they call bottlenecks? Well, first of all, personnel. Personnel. In all the recent studies, this is the red line problem. So availability of skilled personnel goes down. Not only migration and displacement, but mental health as well. Next, adaptation of veterans, involvement of women, retraining, all those could become key efforts to deal with this. Now, access to financial resources. Yeah, it's true. Business complains, and according to this study, about 300 billion hryvnias is what the businesses are lacking, and Ministry of Economy confirmed that. So what the business is doing now? Mostly personalization or family involvement rather than banking investment resources. This is something that needs to be corrected within a 1 month. Ministry of Economy, Ministry of Finance, and the National Bank of Ukraine, how to improve the access of Ukrainian businesses to financial resources. And there is Ukraine Facility Program. Let me remind you that this is the tool that would allow Ukraine to attract about 30 billion euros into Ukrainian economy of investments in the near upcoming years. But in order to use those funds, we need to learn how to work with European and international funds. Another important finding is this. The Ukrainian business is facing divergence, as it's called, because some businesses increase sales 43% in 2022, increased compared to the previous year. But at the same time, 35% of businesses reduced their production and sales. So this divergence existence at the same time of opposite phenomena demonstrates that, on the one hand, we need to support the government policy to support businesses, secondly, consolidation, and thirdly, disseminating positive cases so that thus helping those who face lack of financial resources, competences, or personnel. So this divergence is caused by lack of personnel, because in some regions and industries, the number of personnel is being reduced. And this sometimes causes that salaries for vacancies go up. So summing up with the main challenges that the businesses are facing and what the government could do to help them out with that. So those who are ready to increase investments, and there are about 30% of the businesses who are ready to increase the investments into infrastructure, new equipment, R&D, personnel training, to allow getting access to financial resources. Lack of experience working at the international markets should be compensated by training and helping businesses to create partnerships, like business trips are important. Businesses need to attend fairs, exhibitions, and conduct negotiations, and this issue has not been regulated by the government yet. And so not all those problems, including problems with law enforcement agencies, and on this slide you can see most of the Ukrainian businesses remain optimistic both in terms of what might happen in 2024. Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. And separately, I would like to touch base on investments, because this is seems to be the bottom line topic of discussion. So the investments both to local, regional, and national level should come fast and having attractive terms and conditions. So what could increase the attractiveness of Ukraine economy and Ukrainian businesses? What should be this training effort that you mentioned? What strategies of implementation of best cases should be, and how to train businesses so that at national and local level people would learn where to find investments, how to make their businesses investment attractive, and how to attract investments at the terms and conditions that are attractive to them? Thank you for this question. Thanks to UNIDO, to this UNIDO's comprehensive study that we are here to discuss, we finally can understand what areas require additional training efforts, what exactly our businesses need to study. And the previous effort suggested that there are more money globally that could come to Ukraine than the capacities of Ukraine to absorb those funds. For instance, one DFC, the American States organization, has more than $1 billion of investments for Ukraine, and that's just one of many programs. But even in light of Ukraine facility, out of those 30 billion euros that we can get, well, we only have projects to absorb 8 billion right now. Why it happens? We don't know how to package projects. We need to learn how to transform the ideas into the projects in the format that will be acceptable to international investors. Secondly, we need to rethink our legal structure, making our business bankable, transparent, origin of the capital, credit worthiness of the business, etc. Third thing we need to study is getting more project managers, because those projects need to be managed and we need to report on how we use money. We need dozens of thousands of project managements, and we need to start training them now. Igor? Well, we know what needs to be done, because the problems that Andrii identified right now, this is karma of Ukrainian businesses that exist for many, many dozens of years now. And as a professor, I can say this much. We need to work not only with people's skills, but we need to recognize that any investment project is a compromise. We agree with investors. Investors have their own vested interests, and we need to balance all that. When we tell people, give money on the terms and conditions that are attractive to us, well, business doesn't go the one-way concession roads. So it should be a two-way highway, not just concessions in one in our way. Secondly, training and practical projects should go in parallel. No, it's not training project managers and then attracting funds. It doesn't work like this. In business and elsewhere, there's the principle learning by doing. So the more Ukrainian businesses are learned by doing, well, the better they will learn how to attract them in the most expedient way. And finally, we need to not to talk about business per se, but about segments of the Ukrainian business that during the war were forced to be relocated, both internally and internationally. And they already learned how to operate, and we have large companies that are ready to work with international businesses and who already worked. We're involved in numerous investments projects already, so it's scaling up, basically. So, learning by doing principle should become the cornerstone. And I agree with Andrii that these are solely problems of Ukraine. If we remember the experience of attracting funds, and I am a macroeconomy analyst, like I know how IMF and World Bank funds were attracted before, and unfortunately, none of those programs have been finalized. We have not absorbed and used all the funds that were made available to us at that time, and this is a huge problem. But then again, the problem is not only with business and central, federal government, but also local self-government authorities, because local businesses, they are under the competence of local authorities. Those authorities should have levers, skills and understanding how to attract foreign investors, and this is huge challenge. Ukraine has never faced such a challenge when we need to attract foreign capital at a large scale. Previously it was like, well, you're here not will survive anyway, but now it's all about surviving for real. What sectors or industries are most attractive for foreign investors and which are not that much attractive, both short-term and long-term? It's important to understand that the logic of the points of economic growth could become erroneous, because our job is to create conditions that would allow any sector to grow successfully. So, looking forward and in light of Euro integration, we need to focus on everything that do with green economy, like metallurgy. Green steel should be our ability to let Europe refuse buying Russian steel. And in terms of energy, Ukraine might become the energy hub in Europe, Eastern Europe at least. Yeah, renewable energy is the task for today. There is demand, and exporting biofuel from Ukraine would allow to relaunch biofuel businesses for Ukraine, because Ukraine doesn't need this fuel, it's too expensive for us. Agricultural processing will allow to add value, and value added value could be provided through deep processing. Now, machine building, that's the needs of the military industrial complex for sure, and we can recover machine building not only for military purposes. IT, unfortunately, is no longer the driver of growth. Last year, we lost 8.6% of the turnover and exports of software from Ukraine. The first 2 months of this year, minus 14%, but still, it still has room for growth. Hospitality industry and healthcare. These two industries, like hospitality, should be on the downside, but no, they're building new hotels, restaurants. Why? Because of the internal relocation. Internally displaced people relocated businesses, less people going out as tourists abroad, while healthcare, of course, we need about 200 new hospitals for rehabilitation of our wounded soldiers. 200. Quite substantial investment. But also, this is the future of medical tourism in Ukraine. So lots of UN organizations, Red Cross, UNICEF, they have been proactively involved in drafting the strategy for this sector. Igor, would you have anything to add? Yeah, Andrew provoked me to make this statement, but I'll try to be brief. So, when we talk about businesses, and in all our discussions, we need to understand what could be the formats of the involvement of businesses in the recovery effort. The first format, well, the money come in, the business has capacities, and it's like a contractor or subcontractor. You allocate funds for recovery, business absorbs them, builds sites. Second format, business that chooses its own funds or attracts funds independently, finds partners independently. And the first format would mostly cover the projects on recovering and rebuilding infrastructure, both national and local infrastructure sites. But the second format, attracting private investments, we need to offer triple P opportunities or some other tools. And Ukraine does have legislative foundation for that. Now, Q&A. Roman, anything to add or ask? Question to anyone. Andrew said we need to attract international capital. Igor said there are large companies who know how to do that already. So the question to either two of you or Stefan, what needs to be done so those capital will get not only to large companies, but SMEs who are growing faster? Because if we focus on usual suspects who know how to operate, who have billion-dollar turnover, they can do it on their own. But how to offer that opportunity for SMEs, because they work at the community level? Well, thank you for mentioning local authorities, because this UNIDO study suggests that the involvement of local authorities in helping businesses is even lower than the assistance from the central government. So, SMEs will have about 15% of those investment funds that we will receive through Ukraine facility. That's what the plans state. But this seems to be a small percentage. Yeah, it's true, because currently SMEs don't have capabilities or knowledge or skills how to work with those money. So what could be done so that they would learn? Two things. Firstly, developing clusters, parks, consolidators. Unifying small and medium businesses in joint projects, joint hubs, or joint clusters would allow to jointly attract funds into joint projects, which would allow to hire best experts, not 10 or 15 best experts for 10 or 15 projects, but create a hub or a cluster, and then attracting investments. You can attract technologies, equipment, experts, etc. The second idea that we're actively working on right now is retraining at all levels. Financial directors, commercial directors, technological directors, and CEOs of the companies, so that they would know how to absorb European and other international money. And that's what would make businesses bankable. Rebuilding businesses in such a way that they will be capable of attracting funds themselves. Business training in Ukraine even though we have so many business schools, but it's still underdeveloped. Stefan?
Thank you, and thank you for the extremely interesting discussion up to this point, and also for your question. I think there are a number of points where I would like to add a little bit from the international experience and things that we saw happening in other countries.
But please short it additional.
I will try my very best. The first question that was touched is, how will the recovery look like? And I think I have seen in Ukraine very basically two schools of thought. I mean, I only mentioned the extremes, not the gray in between, just for clarity purpose. School number one is to have a green reconstruction of what was maybe before 2014 in a more modern way, and the other one is a totally different economy. And it's very helpful if there's some clarity which one it is. I personally am in the grayscale between the two, certainly leading more to the second, meaning you will have different markets with different requirements. Some of your industries have lost huge assets, and they had markets in Russia and Belarus which are lost for the foreseeable future. So from my perspective, but that's an important element if it is about attracting investment. I don't see a large difference between a normal company and a company which belongs to the military-industrial complex. I had discussed that. I mean, for us, there's a huge difference because we are not working on military issues, but economically speaking, they're making business, they need funding. Thirdly, I think what's a little bit missing in the discussion on bankable projects is that there is a structural problem with bankable projects and SMEs. And the structural problem is that any loan or any investment has to recover the cost of that investment, the administrative cost, through the return on investment, meaning the sum of the interest has to be considerably higher than the cost to onboard that company. And SMEs need frequently loan of $500,000, $1 million, $1.5 million, and that is globally a huge problem because the cost for a bank to process that loan to ensure the company is sound, that there's collateral, all of these things are higher than the income on interest. So simply, there is no business case for banks to loan. And we can, it's not a question on how well phrased the project is and whether it is bankable or not. The problem is the bank cannot process the project because it's too expensive for them, hence there's no money. And this is an international problem. There are solutions for that, but for me that is the biggest issue, is that because of the non-profitability of the loan market, the really quickly growing parts of the economy are cut off. And that is something that we simply have to do. And I see you being... I close there. There would be more to say. I just stop there.
Okay, thank you. Пане Ігоре, якщо є що додати, буквально 30 секунд.
Let's not forget that even this discussion happens in the time of war. And there would be multiple military and military political challenges. So thus we need to insure those military and other related risks. Without risk insurance, normal business would not fly. Thank you. Thank you, esteemed experts. We've been discussing the empowering Ukraine's growth. Ukrinform will be back at 12:30 when we'll discuss fires at the Russian oil refinery capacities and the consequences for the country aggressor. Thank you. Stay with us.